One. Well, hey, Dave Melinda here, Positive Polarity Podcast. Hope things are going awesome for you this week. I tell you what, you guys, we are going to take a major deviation from our weekly show, and this is going to be so interesting. And, we always start with a question. And so I'm going to start with the same, but it's going to be a unique question. And then we're going to unpack this today. So, my question for you today is, when's the last time that you went to another country, got kidnapped, broke your leg, and while you were trying to escape, and your 3-day journey turned into 5 weeks? Well, I'm honored to be hanging out with somebody that's going to unpack this story for us today. I'm with Andrew Ohlsson. How are you today, my friend?
Hi, Dave. I'm great. Happy Thursday to you.
Absolutely. And you are the director of sales for a company called Telcom One. So fill us in on what Telcom One is before we jump into your personal journey.
Great. Thank you. Yep. We are a telecommunications company located in Brookfield, Wisconsin. We've been around since 1989. We are experts at business phone systems, business internet access, toll-free services. We are a fully fledged telecom provider in Southeast Wisconsin.
Wow, that's super cool. So tell me, how in the world does a guy living in Wisconsin end up in a different country? And start us from the beginning. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, so I'm an avid cyclist, and I usually go to Italy or France with friends or even some clients that would like to come along with me to ride some of the epic courses that Italy and France have. This year we made a plan. There is myself and 5 of my friends who were going to meet in Geneva, Switzerland, kind of beginning of July, and do some epic rides, Tour de France type rides out there and great climbs, and then head down to Nice, France, where the Tour de France was finishing this year because the Olympics were in Paris. So it was an exciting trip. We were going to ride for 10 days, and I was excited. My best friend was coming along with me for the first time on this trip. And so, but I needed some dental work done, actually. So I
Okay.
had heard about getting dental work done in other countries for a lot less money than you can get it done in America.
Okay.
Talked to my dental surgeon here, and he said, "Yep, they do a great job in Europe, Mexico, other places. Just go on the website, find a good dentist, and you can save thousands of dollars." In my case, I was going to save about $6,000, and that kind of justified the cost of the France cycling trip.
Sure.
So I found a very good recommended dentist in Lisbon, Portugal.
Wow.
So I
So
was
that's where
going
you
to,
started. So it was
that's where I
US
started.
to Lisbon, Portugal.
Yep. Also, it's a very good flight direct from O'Hare, Chicago O'Hare to
Sure.
the Lisbon airport. A very reasonable direct flight. It was so nice that I was landing at 8 a.m. in Lisbon, and I had a 12 o'clock appointment for my dentist. I needed to get 3 crowns done, so I wasn't wasting any time. The plan was for me to be there 3 days and then fly on to Geneva and meet my friends.
Okay. So you land in Portugal, life is good. You did, and you get the dental work done, or what happened, but what happened after you got
Yeah.
off the plane?
Right, right. Well, I actually got the dental work done, but there was a
Good.
little bit of a hiccup along the way. So I travel to Europe usually once or at least every other year. So I'm very confident flying to Europe. I'm confident with the airports, but I've never been to the Lisbon airport,
Okay.
or to Portugal. So it was a direct flight, landed at 8 a.m. right on time, went down to baggage claim to get my brand new backpack that I bought from REI. Wanted to travel light, so I had a backpack with all my cycling gear, a few shirts and shorts since it's summer in Europe,
Sure.
and my bike helmet and my computer. So I pick up my bags, and I'm looking on my phone to order an Uber, and I was going to go right to my dentist from the airport. And then
Sure.
he had a hotel set up for me next to the dental clinic.
Okay.
So a gentleman approaches me and he's well dressed. He has a lanyard around his neck and he's in the airport. And he says, "Do you need a taxi?" And I said, "Yeah, actually I do. I was going to get an Uber. How are your prices?" And he says, "Oh, it's metered. We have to charge a set amount." And I said, "Well, that's fair." And I like Uber, but I kind of have a heart for taxis.
Sure.
They usually have to pay a fee to be a taxi driver. And so I'm like, "Oh, great. Okay." So we walk out of the airport. We take a right. We walk a little ways down. As I'm walking, carrying my bags, um, I am texting my dentist to say I'm on time. I'm going to see you in about 30 minutes. And we happened to walk past three police officers. And in my mind, I said to myself, "Well, this is nice. I'm taking a taxi. I'm walking past three police officers. If there's some sort of problem, they're right here."
Sure.
And it's interesting that I had that feeling. I don't know why I
Yeah.
did, but we get to a line of cars. There's about four cars lined up, so it certainly looks like a taxi line. The car does
Yep.
not have a taxi symbol on it, though. But the gentleman opens the trunk for me. I put my bags in the trunk. He opens the rear door. Everything looks normal. I sit down, and as soon as I sit down, I hear "Stop! Stop! Stop!" screaming. I look behind me. The three police officers who were maybe 50 yards away are sprinting towards us and waving their arms, and they're yelling "Stop!" I immediately thought of exiting the vehicle, but the gentleman who brought me to the vehicle slammed the door on me, and I look up and there's a driver in the driver's seat. So it wasn't the guy who brought me to the car that was driving.
Okay. Sure.
So the driver immediately floors it. The wheels spin, and he takes, screeching wheels, he takes off. So immediately I thought there's a problem. I look behind me, the police are still on foot, running after us, screaming
Wow.
"Stop!" I
Sure.
yell to the driver, "Stop!" He doesn't stop. Instead, he speeds up. I look at in front, out the pass. I look at him first, thinking, "Can I attack this guy?" He seemed to be a larger man. I'm like,
Yep.
I don't know how good a luck I'll have, trying to choke the guy. We might crash. Who knows?
Sure.
I
Sure.
look up and I see there's a curve around the curve coming up. We're still in the airport. There's a car up there, and I'm thinking, when he's going to get to the curve and there's a car in front of him, he's going to have to slow down. This is a good idea for me to exit at that time. So
Sure.
we're doing about 30 miles an hour at this time. I check the door and it opens. I was like, "Wow, I didn't lock the door." Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
Being a cyclist, I fall quite a bit. So I felt pretty confident at 30 miles an hour I could survive this crash. And I step out and I realize, wait a second, my helmet isn't on my head like when I'm cycling. And typically, when you are a cyclist and you crash in a bike race, you tuck and roll. Well, if you
Okay.
don't have a helmet on, that's not a very good idea.
Okay.
And as I'm contemplating this in this a split second, my foot catches something, twists, and I go down. So I am on the airport exit ramp in pain. Right away, I knew it was broken. The three police officers catch up to me pretty quickly. They lift me off the road. Um, I had my passport and wallet in my pants, so I didn't care about my luggage. Right
Sure.
in those 3 seconds that I was still in the car making a decision if I'm going to fight or flight,
Yeah.
I said, "Well, first of all, I don't care about my bags. Secondly, I didn't know what this guy had in mind for me. I had an actual vision of me laying on a gurney with my guts hanging out and they're selling my organs. That's the
Wow.
actual vision that I had while I was in the backseat of that car. Fake,
Sure.
we'll call it a fake taxi.
Yeah.
So with that, I had no idea what was going on, if they were just going to take me, beat me up, kidnap me. I
Yeah.
don't know. It's just, the guy didn't stop. The cops were chasing us. I needed to escape. So back to the police. So they carry me to a corner and they call an ambulance. They're very attentive. They're younger police officers. And I'm like, what happened? Can you get these guys? And I heard one officer said, "We know who these guys are." And I'm like, "Oh, wow." So I'm feeling pretty good. They're going to catch these guys, you know. Um, so I'm laying on the ground. My leg is in the air. I'm like, do you guys have any ice? They're like, no, but the ambulance is on its way. And so I'm starting to go into shock a little bit. I start tapping my leg. There's a tapping effect that keeps you from going unconscious. If everybody ever heard of that, it actually
Wow.
works.
Never heard of that. No.
Yeah, you just tap your hand on something and it helps clarify your brain. So
Oh, okay.
I'm doing this, and the ambulance shows up, and the guy comes out, and he's starting to attend, gives me some ice on the leg. I'm feeling a little bit better. I say to one of the officers, hey, you know, if you guys know who these guys are, can I give you a description of my bags? And they said, yeah, that's a great idea. So I start telling them. They speak perfect English, even though we're in Portugal. So everything's cool there. Give them a description of my bags. And suddenly, around the corner, a fourth police officer shows up carrying all my bags. Now, my bags were brand new, just bought them at REI.
Sure.
If the guys who took me threw the bags out, they would have been scuffed up. So I immediately thought, oh, you stopped these guys, you got the bags, you arrested the guys, we're going to take care of business here.
Sure.
And so I I see it appears that this fourth officer is their supervisor or sergeant.
Okay.
And I say, oh, hey, you caught the kidnappers. And he shakes his finger at me. Now let's make it very clear right now that you were not kidnapped. And I'm like, okay, well, I was taken. I asked the guy to stop. He sped up. Your officers were chasing me. I don't know what happened, but now I have a broken leg. Thanks for getting my bags. I hope that you can get these guys and do something. I
Sure.
mean, I wasn't going to have a long conversation right there. You know, I
Right.
was just being escorted into the ambulance.
Sure.
So I get into the ambulance and they whisk me off to the public hospital. I get to the hospital and it's medium busy. There's maybe 5 people waiting in a room, and they kind of prioritized me. I was very grateful. I was like, great, because this was a pretty bad fracture. I got a spiral fracture of both the tibia and the fibia, so both
No.
bones were broken. And a gentleman comes out and says, hey, everybody, it's bad news. The X-ray machine is broken, and the software for it to work, it doesn't work at any of our public hospitals. So if you need help, I would suggest that you go to a private hospital. So there was a British lady there. She had twisted her ankle. She says, hey, I heard, little, about your story. Do you want to get an Uber to the private hospital? I said, yes. They didn't give me any drugs. The pain was coming back. I'm like, what the heck? So we go to
Oh no.
yeah. But we get to the private hospital. I'm in the back of the Uber. We got my foot up in the air, and the lady from England was a sweetheart, and she kept my mind off of the pain. And we get to this beautiful hospital. And during the Uber ride, I call the U.S. Embassy and I tell them what happened. And they said, Andrew, there's a problem. We suggest that you contact a Lisbon attorney immediately. We are going to send you a list of attorneys. Call one of them immediately. So they kind of scared me, right?
Yeah. Sure.
And I'm like, I wonder what's wrong. And so luckily, my daughter-in-law's mom is divorced and she is dating a man from Portugal. So I call up Barb, my in-law. I'm in a Uber on my way to the hospital.
Sure.
I need an attorney. Can your boyfriend Jack suggest anything? Says,
Wow.
sure. My cousin is an attorney, a good attorney in Lisbon. He'll call you. So he calls me and I said, what's going on here? His name is Nuno. And I said, why is the US Embassy asking that I contact an attorney? And he says, yeah, there's been some problems. I'm like, well, okay, I don't know what you're talking about, but he says, I'm going to find out if the police has actually filed a report for what happened. because the first thing he said, did a police officer attend to you from the accident to the hospital? Did he ride with you in the ambulance? I said,
Sure.
no. He
Yeah.
said, that's a major problem. He said, when a crime is committed, this is called a public crime, is committed, an officer is supposed to go with you to the hospital and check you in and make sure everything's okay.
Sure.
If that didn't happen, why didn't it happen? Okay. And then I said, and also the sergeant or supervisor, was very adamant about telling me that I wasn't kidnapped.
Yeah.
And he says, yeah, that could be a problem as well. He said, um, I'm going to send my daughter, who's also an attorney, to come get you and take you to the police station, after you've settled down and the pain is less. And
Sure. Yeah.
um, so the next morning we did that. Sure enough, we get to the police station and we can't find any record of a report being made from the day before. So she calls her dad and he's like, I'm going to the airport immediately. I'm going to get the videotapes and I'm going to force the police officers to file the report. And so he did that. And then I met with him in his office. He had me sign a proxy so he could represent me in court if needed.
Okay.
But he recommended that when the court date comes, which could be months from now, that I go to court to testify in person. So I might have to fly back to Portugal.
Oh, geez.
And that's not a negative. I kind of fell in love with Portugal. So what happened was I called up my friends. I said, I'm not coming to Geneva in 3 days. My dentist was heartbroken that this whole thing happened. He actually offered to bring me to the hospital when the surgery was scheduled and pick me up and check me into a nice hotel and all of that. So he was
Yeah.
great.
Sure.
And so that's what happened. So the next day I was scheduled for surgery. Beautiful hospital. I used my American Express card. It was 8,100 euros, which is about $8,700, which is much cheaper than if I flew back to America to have the surgery and paid me a deductible and
Sure.
copays.
Yeah.
State-of-the-art hospital, a young surgeon, really knew what he was doing. And the problem was, he said, well, number one, you can't put any weight on this foot for 2 weeks, not even an ounce of weight. And I'm staying in one of the hilliest cities in the world,
Oh
hillier
my.
than San Francisco,
Wow.
and all cobbles. So I'm on
Sure.
crutches on cobbles. And he also said you can't fly because of danger of blood clots after
Sure.
surgery. So I
Sure.
said, well, how long? And he said 5 weeks minimum. So
Gosh.
I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with a broken leg for 5 weeks in Lisbon, Portugal?
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
So like
yeah,
what the heck? Yeah, no, I'm just curious. I want to kind of wrap my brain around this. So you're in the airport thinking it's a taxi. I'm assuming the goal for them was to abduct you and then whatever their plan was. Did they ever catch the guys that were there?
right. Yeah. So they obviously stopped the guys to get my luggage. Now,
Okay.
they arrest them. Did they charge them with anything? I have no idea. But what my attorney believes and what the U.S. Embassy also confirmed is that somebody was in on something, right? I don't know if the police were in on an extortion ring or what, but basically, what would have happened? Portugal's a very safe place. Somebody is not going to technically kidnap you or beat you up or kill you in Portugal. I mean, they could, of course, but that's not the kind of country that is. That's not the kind of crimes that happen there. When somebody is taken in one of these fake taxis, typically the taxi driver actually brings you to where you want to go and then says, oh, that'll be 100 euros or $100, right? And you say, no, Uber would have been $10. Like, nope, $100. And they'll do something, right? They'll keep your bags or they'll threaten you or something like that.
Sure.
And
Okay.
typically you just pay the $100 and you go on your way and everything's good.
Okay.
Now, why did the police uh, chase me, chase the car? They must have known that this guy wasn't a real taxi. Was I a guinea pig on a sting operation? And they wanted to bust this guy. But if that was the
Sure.
case, how come they didn't arrest him when it did happen? Um, were the police going to get half of the extortion money? I don't know. The average pay for police there is 800, or for most people in Portugal is only $800 a month, and prices are going up there. So maybe that has something to do with something, right? I'm not
Sure.
going to pass any judgment. I'm not going to say
Sure.
who did what wrong, but
Yeah.
it's very strange that the police didn't seem to arrest them, but they stopped them. They knew who they were. So I don't know. I guess it'll all come out when I go back to court.
Oh. So then you end up, so you had to have your leg repaired there. Then were you in a hotel for 5 weeks? Is that basically what you did, or what happened once you got out of the hospital?
Right. So I was in the hospital for 2 days. Fantastic hospital again. Holy cow. If you ever get injured in Portugal, don't worry. Just go to the private hospital.
Sure.
It's amazing. Great food too. But I was there for 2 full days. And then my dentist picked me up and brought me to a really nice hotel. But after a day, I was going stir crazy. I'm like, I'm not going to sit around the hotel for 5 weeks, and
Yeah.
by myself. And I had a friend that I had met in Como, Italy last year, staying at a hostel, and she lives in Paris. Um, and I was going to maybe stop and see her after my trip with my friends and see a couple Olympic events.
Sure.
So I had called her a few months prior to my trip, and she said, "Yeah, yeah, come to Paris and stay with us." And she's got a family there, and so that was really nice. Well, when this happened, I called her and said, I'm not coming to Paris. I'm stuck in Portugal. And she said, "Andrew, I'm on it. I'm gonna help you." I'm like, "Whatever." I'm like, "Great, I'll take it."
Sure.
so
Sure.
so she goes, "I know this woman that from Belarus that I helped last year, and her husband is from Switzerland, and he has a place somewhere in Portugal, and I'm gonna see if they can help you."
Wow.
So she calls her friend. Her friend says, "Yep, I'm going to have my husband help." I get a phone call from this guy. His name is Franz. He's from Switzerland. He's 83 years old. He goes, "Andrew, my name is Franz. You don't know me, but my wife tells me I have to help you.
There you go. That's
She's out
awesome.
of town. She's out of town in Belarus visiting her mom, and I'm by myself. So I'm going to drive the 3.5 hours to Lisbon, pick you up, and bring you to my condo in the south of Portugal in a town in an area called the Algarve."
Wow.
So I'm like, I'll take it. Thanks, Franz. I'll
Sure.
see you soon. So sure enough, he comes, picks me up at the hotel. We have a nice lunch. We head down to the south of Portugal, 3.5 hours, and we became the best of friends. It was awesome. I was
Oh
laid
my
up. I
gosh.
couldn't really do much. He just would help me. We went to a grocery store. He goes, "I don't know how to cook. Can you teach me how to cook so when my wife comes back, I can cook something for her?" I said, "Sure."
Wow.
So
My
that was
gosh.
that was wonderful. Yeah, yeah.
Holy cow. So you were with him for 4 weeks or so then?
No, I was only there a week, and my leg
Okay.
was starting to heal, and I needed to go back to see my doctor for a follow-up visit.
Okay.
So I
Okay.
felt good enough to take the bus back to Lisbon. Very reasonable. Everything's very reasonable in Portugal. It was like $8, I think, to take a 3-hour bus trip.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, so I went back to Portugal, went to see my doctor. Everything looked good with the surgery. It was healing well, but still no weight. And then it's like, well, I'm not going back to the hotel. When I travel, sometimes I stay in hostels. They're no longer just youth hostels. People of all ages will stay there. It's usually about $20 to $30 a night. And they usually have a common area, and you get to meet travelers from all over.
Sure.
So even though most of the hostels didn't have elevators, I
Oh,
was always able to find. First of all, the hotel was gracious enough to keep half my bags. So all I
Okay.
needed to take was a small backpack to
Sure.
go into the hostel. And it was wonderful. It was great to see a lot of college students in their 20s traveling around, and got to know them, got to know that generation real well. And I have a positive outlook for the next generation, let me tell you.
Oh,
Lot of
great.
good, lot of good 20-year-olds out there.
Sure. Wow. So then you just for the last couple weeks were just go did you stay in the same hostel or did you go different ones in the area?
Yeah, so another generous thing happened. When I needed to go see the police, go to the police station, I noticed there was a tuk-tuk driver. So Nuno's daughter dropped me off at the Starbucks and she parked the car. Came back, said, Andrew, the police station is 4 blocks away. And I'm like, yeah, it's not going to be easy for me. So I said, what about asking this tuk-tuk driver that's a three-wheel vehicle and they are tour guides? And I
Okay.
said, hey, could you bring us 4 blocks for $20? And he's like, of course I can.
Sure.
So we get in there, we tell the story on the way, and he's like, you know what? I'm not taking your money. Just do the police report, and then I'll take you back to your car.
Wow.
Younger guy, like 30 years old. And then so we drop off Nuno's daughter, Raquel, with her car. And he goes, well, what are you doing the rest of the day? I said, I don't know. I said, I'm gonna find a hostel. He goes, well, stay in the tuk-tuk. I'll charge you a small fee and I'll take you around all of Lisbon and the whole
Oh my
area for
gosh.
8 hours. So we went all over. We went to this beautiful city of Cascais, which is about 15 miles west of Lisbon. As like it's like Disneyland out there. I'm like, this is amazing. He goes, yeah, it's I highly recommend this place. It's considered the Portuguese Riviera. Beautiful, beautiful city. So we spent 8 hours together, found out he's a man of faith. He said, hey, can you come to church with my wife and I on Sunday? I'd love you to be there. He says, I want you to have a good feeling about Lisbon and Portugal,
Sure.
this great country, and I'm sorry this happened to you at the airport. And so it was awesome. He hooked me up with a really good hostel to go to. And then the next day he picked me up again, and we hung out. It was wonderful. And then I said, hey, as much as I love Lisbon, I'm kind of getting sick of this place and I can't walk much. It's really
Yeah.
hilly. I
Yeah.
said, can you take me to Cascais? He's like, yep, I'll take you there. Found a great hostel right down from a beach that I could hobble to.
Sure.
Uh, when I was in Cascais, I was there for about a week. I was walking around. I saw a woman with crutches and a broken leg. Name was Andrea. My name's Andrew. I'm like, this is meant to be. I said, how'd you break your leg? She told me she fell off of a curb. And so she's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened. I've got a car. I'd like to give you a tour of the city. We could go out to dinner. We could, hang out. My hostel was next to her house. And
Sure.
so I made another amazing friend. It was wonderful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So
Yeah.
how in the world so what was the response from the US Embassy? I mean, were they, you hear a lot of different things about that. I'm just curious what your experience was with that.
So they were super responsive, very helpful. If I sent them an email, a text, or called them, they responded immediately. There was no hesitation. They basically said, "Look, we can't do anything physically to help you, right? That's why you needed a Portuguese attorney,
Okay.
but we can guide you. And obviously, if there's any problem at any time, you can come see us, come to the embassy, whatever. Just keep us posted on what's going on during this whole process." They did put me in touch with an agency that also helps tourists when they're in Portugal if there's a problem. It's a nonprofit agency. I reached out to them after the embassy gave me their number, and they were very concerned about this as well. And they said, yep, we've been hearing about these things happening more and more in Portugal. We're trying to put an end to it. We're trying to educate people. Um,
Wow.
Evidently, in the airport, there's huge signs that say, don't get into an unmarked taxi. Of
In
course,
Portuguese, though, obviously.
it was probably in both English and Portuguese. But I got off the plane. I'm looking at my phone. I'm
Yeah,
exhausted from the flight. Didn't
sure.
see any sign, but evidently
Yeah.
they were there. So my advice to you is when you're traveling to a new country, look up and read the signs.
Oh my gosh. Wow. So because like yeah, like the embassy, you'd never really know what their purpose is. So their
Yeah.
purpose is to guide you if you're part of that country then is that's kind of what their goal was for you?
Yeah, that was my experience. First time ever calling the US Embassy. So I didn't know what to expect. I just, I guess, just thought instinctively that I should call a US Embassy. I figured I was in a major city, there would be one.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, basically, yeah, their role is so the American Embassy is to support Americans. So if you're
Okay.
overseas and you have an issue, contact the embassy immediately and they will respond and give you the best advice on how to help you.
Wow, and like you said, it was great that you got your bags back, but if you wouldn't have, you at least had your passport. I would have never have thought to keep it on my person rather than in a bag, you know. It's less like that's kind of how I would roll. So
Yeah,
that's
and a matter of fact, I recommend like I had my wallet in my front pocket. Always keep your wallet in your front pocket, never your back pocket. And I had a little bit of cash, some credit cards, and my driver's license. But I bought a special pouch for my backpack that I put around my neck, and I put
mm,
some cash and a credit card in that pouch as well. So if somebody were to steal my wallet, most likely they wouldn't ask for the passport or wouldn't even know that I had a
sure.
passport on me.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and so yeah, spread your credit cards out a little bit
Sure.
and spread
Wow.
your cash out a little bit, and that way, if one item gets stolen, you still have a second option.
So then you had to did you have to go back to the doctor to get cleared to come back to the US or how did that final piece get put into place?
Yeah, and actually, that was a bit frustrating. As much as the English that they do speak there, it is a little bit hard to navigate when you're in a foreign country and you don't know their language.
Sure.
So he had told me that second visit that I was to come back on a certain date. And so I made the plan to come back. I call the hospital the night before and say, I don't have a time for tomorrow's appointment. They said, oh, well, that's okay because the doctor's on vacation anyway.
Oh
Like
no.
he told me to come back. So so I told my dentist, who of course speaks Portuguese, what happened. He goes, Andrew, I got you covered. So he
Wow.
calls the hospital, obviously speaking Portuguese, said, look, I'm a doctor also. I said, this is ridiculous, and so the hospital accommodated and got another doctor for me to to visit. And that was important to me because that was the second week when I was supposed to be able to put some weight on my leg.
Sure.
And so I'm not going to wait another 8, 9 days before my doctor comes back to find out
Yeah.
that the whole time I could have been,
Sure.
standing on my leg.
Yeah.
And so that guy was a great doctor also. And he said, look, I'm not your surgeon. I don't know exactly what to tell you, but it looks like it's healing fine. You can put, light pressure if you want on the leg, but be cautious and then see your actual surgeon in a week from now when he comes back.
Sure. So then
Yeah.
he came back and then you saw them and then he finally gave you approval to go home?
Right. He said, yeah, everything looks safe, secure. It was probably 4 weeks into it. And he said, so you can make travel plans to fly. Just, make sure you take these blood thinning pills that keep the blood clots down.
Sure. Yep.
Um, and so I said, well, do you think for safety reasons I should get like a walking boot? Because they had, with the surgery, what it encompassed was not using a cast. With both bones broken, they needed to use screws and a plate. So they actually screw the screws into your existing bone.
Mm,
And what's interesting with that is they want you moving your ankle as fast as possible and as much as possible versus securing it in a solid cast.
sure.
And so it was just a light wrapping. And so I said, do you recommend that I get like a walking boot so that if somebody bumps my leg on the airplane or something, it'll be okay.
Yeah. Fair.
I said, yeah, that's a good idea. So I had a walking boot, and that was wonderful. It was like a whole new world opened up to me. I could get around a little bit better.
Sure.
Made the most of it. I said, I'm going to fly out of the north of Portugal instead of Lisbon. I took the train up to a beautiful town called Porto, one of the most beautiful cities I'd ever seen. So that was amazing. And then there's really, if anybody's interested and they ever want to fly to Portugal, I suggest flying Azure's Airlines out of Boston or New York City. $250, and they're like mini Hawaiian Islands for 1/8 the price.
Wow.
So I flew to the Azures for 3 days. It was during their festival. It was wonderful. Um, got some beautiful videos of these locals who, I don't know, maybe 1,000 of them dressed up in handmade costumes, singing, dancing.
Sure.
So yeah, the people were great. The experience was great. Food, Ubers, lodging, everything's about half the price in America, and everything's very safe and beautiful. 85 and sunny every day that I was there, the month of July and into August.
Oh, just don't take an unmarked taxi. Huh? That's the key.
Just don't take an unmarked taxi anywhere you go in the world.
Wow. That's
Trust
crazy.
Uber. A lot of people don't trust Uber, but I think it's very trustworthy. I took
Sure.
lots of Ubers when I was there. Um, and they've got an app. They know where you are, when you are, who you're with, all of
Yeah.
that. They can track the
Yeah.
drivers and everything. Marked taxis that are in taxi lines also are monitored and registered.
Sure.
So it's a very simple thing to do.
Yeah.
The other thing
Wow.
that I suggested to my dentist is like, look, when you're booking an appointment with a customer to have dental work done, why don't you send a driver to the airport?
Yeah.
Even if it costs a little bit more, just put it on the
Sure.
bill. I mean,
Yeah. Wow.
I was saving about four to $6,000 anyway, so I
Yeah.
would have
Yeah.
gladly paid an extra $20 to take a take a car.
Sure. So now why are they thinking you might have to go back? Are they trying to look at pressing charges, or what's the plan moving forward?
Well, as much as I'm appreciative of this attorney, I haven't had much contact with him in the last few weeks, even though I've reached out to him to find out. But
Sure.
when I was talking to him there, he said, look, as great as Portugal is, we're still Portugal. The court system can be months. They might call our case 6, 7 months from now. We just
Yeah.
have to wait. My concern is that these two guys that took me, what happened to them? Did they leave the country? Are they still having this extortion game? Are they still
Sure.
being fake taxis and abducting people,
Sure.
shaking them down? You know, or were they just simply trying to make a fare? Maybe they would have only charged me €10
Yeah.
and they didn't want to pay the fee to Uber, or they couldn't become an Uber driver.
Sure.
Um, I have no idea from
Yeah.
anybody who
Yeah.
these guys were, what they were after, why they were running from the police. Maybe they simply were scared. Um, but I yelled stop. The guy didn't stop. And I, you know, I don't know. I personally hope that, this whole thing cost me about $10,000. Plus, I'm going to pay my friends some money for shared expenses that they had in France. It wasn't
Sure.
their fault that I wasn't there.
Sure.
Um, I don't know, I'm an avid athlete. I don't know how this injury is going to heal and it's going to affect my ability to do the sports I love, you
Yeah.
know. So I don't know. I'm about 7 weeks into it.
Yeah. Jeez.
Yeah.
Still, how you walking? You walking okay?
Yeah, but now I'm wondering if there's something wrong with my foot that wasn't injured. Maybe it was injured because that I can't walk on that foot now. So now I'm using my
Oh,
broken
jeez.
leg to do most of my walking.
Oh, wow.
Um, Yeah,
Yeah.
so my heel is in a lot of pain. So I'm gonna go see another doctor,
Wow.
um, and find out if there's another injury that I
Yeah,
ignored because the other one was much worse.
sure. What what's your tip for anybody listening as we land the plane today? No pun intended. Just curious, what's your tip for somebody listening?
First of all, don't let the story hesitate in traveling. Travel more. The greatest thing that I learned in traveling and staying at the hostels and being stuck in one place for so long is I got to know their culture. It's amazing how similar human beings are throughout the world. The number one way to create creativity, they've done scientific tests on this, is to travel to a different country. If you can be in another culture for an extended period of time, your brain starts firing different ways, and you have different thoughts and feelings, and it's wonderful.
Yeah,
Um, Obviously, you want to be diligent and safe, and anything can happen at any time in any country. Obviously, in America, we've got our own issues too.
sure,
The more traveled you are, the more comfortable and confident you are. Just don't
sure.
do what I did and be too comfortable and confident, right?
Yeah,
Look up at the airport, pick who you choose to get rides with. Again, we know Uber is good. We know Lyft is good. We know that bonded certified taxi drivers are good. Um, Keep your head moving, looking around when you're walking. Always be confident. Try and be in pairs, but don't feel bad about traveling by yourself like I did,
sure.
and walk with a purpose. The same
Yeah.
advice I'd give you if you're in Chicago or New York,
Yeah, exactly.
you know.
Wow.
Um, yeah, but don't,
Well,
but don't, if anything, use this experience to say, wow, you had a bad experience and it came out pretty good.
yeah. Well, and I think it's awesome all along the way, Andrew, that you had, the Lord had people in your path to be able to help you with that because that's my big fear. We travel around the country of US a lot, but I haven't spent a lot of time outside of the US because I have that fear of what happens if something happens and you can't communicate with somebody. They want to take advantage of you, whatever. Those are all, head trash in my mind. So, it's great to have, a different side that people were super helpful and that they were able to, obviously there were a couple bad eggs in the basket, but the majority of the people it sounded like that you came in contact with were very helpful. So,
I would have to
um,
say, look, I love America, I love Americans, and we live in Wisconsin where there's Wisconsin nice people, right?
yeah,
No, I would never say that people wouldn't help in the same situation, but my gut tells me that the Portuguese people were even more hospitable than most Americans. I
gotcha.
There was a time I was walking, I was going stir crazy in the hostel. I said, I'm going out, I'm on the crutches, and there's a lot of restaurants, and the restaurant owners are usually outside trying to convince you to eat at their restaurant.
Sure.
And so this gentleman stops me and says, "Hey, what happened to you?" And I tell him the story. He goes, "That's it. You're coming in. Anything you want on the menu is yours. You're not paying a dime."
Oh my
And
gosh.
so he said, "Please get an appetizer, get dinner, get dessert, get a drink. It's all on me."
Wow. There you go. Well, that's awesome. And again, I hope that encourages people today listening, that it is still okay to travel. There still are good people in this world. So I just wanted people to hear your story. When I heard it, I was like, oh my gosh, I think the listeners around the world are going to love this. Thank you so much, Andrew, for sharing it. And I will update the group as you get things happening. So hopefully we get 100% healing in both legs, which is awesome. And hopefully you don't have to go back to Portugal to testify or to figure out where things are. So,
I'm going to leave you with one more
yeah,
piece of advice too. That first night that I was in the hotel, it was hard to sleep. I had a little PTSD, um, and I said, I can't isolate. I can't be in my head. So if ever something like this happens to any of your listeners, even if you're at home and you're just feeling down, um, don't isolate. Get with other humans. Tell your story.
Yeah.
Tell them how you're feeling.
Yep.
Tell them what you're going through, and that's the best. That's the thing that kept me positive and straight is that I would talk to as many people as I could. I was open. I'd get out and I'd go to a public restaurant, something like that. Highly recommend that if ever you're feeling down, depressed,
Sure.
just get out with other people,
Sure. And I
even if
think
they're
that's a
strangers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great concept for business as well. If you are, struggling, don't isolate. There are other people out there, to be able to help. There's peer-to-peer groups, there's networking groups, there's roundtables, there's people on your team that can help, there's coaches, consultants, there's all different opportunities to be able to help you. So I love that
Yes.
message, Andrew, to not feel like you have to go through this yourself. So that's awesome. If somebody wants to learn more about, Telcom One or learn more about you, what's the best way for people to connect with you?
Yeah, great. Thank you. Well, we have I am on Facebook, Andrew Ohlsson, um, and LinkedIn. Also, Telecom One. We have Telecom One. I'm sorry, Telecom hyphen one .net. So
Okay,
telecom
perfect.
hyphen one .net. Yeah.
Perfect. TELECOM hyphen ONE.net. That's the spot to get a hold of Andrew or find him on Facebook and LinkedIn. And so thank you so much for making yourself vulnerable, sharing your story. So often when people go through tragedy, this can affect them negatively. Sounds like there's a lot of positive that's happened. So we're going to continue to believe and confess more positives going to come out of this for you. And it's again great to hear that you're back home safe. And it must have been nice to come driving up your driveway
Mm.
and seeing your house and your lake and be like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy I'm home.
Yeah, and that brought up a real good point. So my doctor wants me to ride my bike, so I went out on the group ride. I couldn't hang with some of the guys like normal, but afterwards, out here in Delafield, we go to Reviere's and have dinner after we ride. And I told the guys, they couldn't imagine my story, and I said, you know what? You're my comfort food. So comfort food isn't just that American hamburger that you can't get overseas, because by the way, that is wonderful to have. That's my first go-to when I get back
Sure.
from Europe. But your people and your normalcy. So to your point, Dave, yeah, it wasn't just coming back to my house, but it was coming back to my friends and my normal activities that felt more wonderful than I've ever had that feeling on a 1 week or
Sure.
2 week vacation. When you're gone for
Yep.
5 weeks by yourself,
Yeah.
wow, that makes a
Yep.
difference.
Well, and that puts things into perspective as we land, because I think that it's the things we take for granted all of a sudden become that much more special. So do yourself a favor if
Amen.
you're listening today, is appreciate the normalcy that you have. Take time to appreciate somebody in your life and appreciate just the simple things, whatever they are, because you never know if you're going to see that or experience that again. So thank you so much for hanging out with us, and can't wait to hear the rest of the story. We'll keep the listeners updated, and again, appreciate all that you shared today.
Thank you, Dave.